Welcome back to Dealmakers Conversations, where we sit down with M&A-minded business leaders to talk about how they run their organizations and their thoughts on deal making. In this final segment today, we sit down with Warren Young, the chairman of Acme Industries, to discuss identifying targets for acquisitions and making sure that there's good alignment in a deal. We think you'll like this. I'm here with Warren Young, chairman of Acme Industries and Automation Nth. Warren, thanks for joining us here today.
Glad to be with you.
Excellent. So, Warren, I want to explore deal making with you, and you've got broad experience in a lot of different areas. I want to start with just what elements of a company have you found over your experience most attractive when evaluating deals?
I think it depends a lot on the entity that's looking to do the acquisition. I mean, in many cases, you want to try to bring something to the party. Unless you're a large institution that doesn't really care, then you're looking for what can I bring to this particular deal? Can I bring technical expertise? I've been there, done that. Can I do it from a management standpoint? Do I see low-hanging fruit that I can deal with? Now, I would say in truth, I'm probably more inclined to be an operator than a deal maker. But in order to be an operator, I've had to make some deals, and I've made over time 3 different deals in acquisitions. So, if you're a large institutional investor, I think it matters, maybe you're just looking for that diamond in the rough that can go it alone and it doesn't need a lot of input from you. But if you're an acquirer that wants to add value and think you can, then having some synergies with your background is pretty important to that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, as you look at your background, it is definitely in a field where both these companies play. How important do you think that type of synergy with background is with an entrepreneur?
I happen to be very biased toward that end. I would say that my Acme acquisition had more of a common thread to my background, which had a lot of precision industrial equipment in it, including precision machining, and that's what that business was. I think in my particular background, I had a larger company experience that's been very helpful going into entities that maybe didn't get a chance to see best practices. So that's part of it. For the automation acquisition, in truth, the only thing that I brought was management experience, business experience, because that technical background of automation is not something that I had been all that much involved with. But it also is one that had more low-hanging fruit, and an opportunity to do a lot of fun things to bring that company along. So it's been a great experience there.
That's great to hear. So, as you look at that, let's talk about the importance of good management teams in a deal. When you've made these 3 acquisitions, did you invest in people or ideas or a combination of both?
I would say both. I mean, first of all, if you are making, even no matter what due diligence you do, you're probably not going to be absolutely sure what you're getting in people until once you're inside the company. And then do you see an opportunity for growth, for making the company better? For Acme, it was a family-owned 3rd-generation company that felt that they'd done all that they could do with their experience base. And having been to larger companies with a lot of precision machining in it, I saw the opportunity to do something with that. For automation, they were still in the 1st generation. It was about an 18-year-old company, but they were pretty inbred in what they had. They had a lot of technical expertise, but that's the case where my son and I, that's where I partnered with my son to have an entrepreneurial experience. And so he went in as the business guy, and I got a chance to be the coach. And, in that case, it was a matter of getting them off of their conservative way that they did business.
Interesting. You mentioned that when you acquired Acme, it had been a long-time family business. What unique dynamics of it being a family business did you encounter during the deal? And did the ownership team stick around for a while afterwards?
They stuck around for like 3 months, which is in essence nothing. And that was okay with me, and it was okay with them. But they had built a decent company. At the time, it had about 75 employees, and so it had a critical mass, and it was. And in terms of that business and the what I needed to put together, that was a very capital-intensive business. So, I ended up needing a lot of heavy, deep-pocketed partners to help me do that deal. And the owners were in a mode of, kind of wanting to move on. They had a decent set of folks, but over time, as with anything, you find out the ones that are really good and stick with it, and those that can't quite make the grade in the new situation.
Yeah, and that's interesting to hear. A lot of people have said that it's tough for the folks after they let go to stick around for a while. So it seems like it was similar with you. You mentioned you needed some deep pockets. Was that private equity with Acme then?
In that case, it was a combination, a little private equity, but a lot of mezzanine. And fortunately, that was in one entity, so I didn't have to deal with two different capital partners.
Interesting.
But I was not every. It doesn't happen in every case, but I was fortunate to find guys that were high integrity, and they were in it to try to make something of it. We had some challenging times, but they hung in there. Maybe in part because they had a lot of money in the deal. So it was like they couldn't very well throw me to the curb and let it just unravel. So, we hung in there together, and were able to make it a decent deal for them, and subsequently better for others.
Excellent. How were they as a partner? I mean, in terms of adding some value to it, did they bring some other stuff to the table for you other than capital?
No.
So they were purely a capital, and you were the operator, so to speak.
I was the operator. I will say that having a lot of money as a partner on the table allowed us to navigate with the bank when we went into some tough times. It's a highly capital intensive business, which can cycle. And when it cycled down, the bank, so I would say that was the greatest value of that partner. The bank knew that they were on board and they were hanging in there. So the bank was able to be more patient as a result of that.
That's good to hear. As an operator, you've been able to increase sales. You've streamlined operations over the years. You've re-engineered processes and systems. How do you analyze the different aspects of a company in order to identify the areas for either improvement or for growth?
It's not all that complex. I guess the most recent example is the automation acquisition, which we did 5 years ago. Fortunately, it's not a capital-intensive business. So instead of needing an outside partner, I was able to get enough bank debt to do the deal. And going in there, one of the first things we did was do a strategic planning session. And I used a consultant that I'd used elsewhere to kind of help us map out where the possibilities were. And that gave us a good idea of an industry focus that would be very good for us, which is life sciences. And then once in the business, some of them, the things are just basic blocking and tackling. For instance, they were on QuickBooks. Well, you can't scale a business on QuickBooks. They were in a catch-22 when it came to resources. You'd ask them, well, why? This is the executive team that we went in to be with. Why don't we grow? Well, we don't want to add people unless we've got a project. And then if we get a project, we don't want to, take it unless we have people. So, if you don't add people, you can't do the projects. So it was a matter of saying, okay, let's start hiring aggressively and keep the faith that we'll find the projects to go with that. And then we got into the new industry area, changed the business model. The prior business model was we're a tier 2 company, and we were able to change it to a tier 1 company. And, right now, 5 years in, our top line is 8 times what it was before we went in, and the bottom line is 18 times.
That's an awesome increases.
It is.
So let me ask you this. You took a minority stake interest, I believe, in automation. And why was it?
Not true. Not true. We took 51%.
51%. Okay. So you kept a minority partner involved with that business.
Yes.
Correct?
Which was, in essence, the critical mass of the company. The founding guy and his team stayed in at 49, but they had the technical expertise. We together didn't have that, but they didn't have the business and management expertise. So it's been a great blending.
Excellent.
In many cases, acquisitions where somebody comes in as kind of the ruling party, it doesn't end well. It doesn't go well. In this case, it did, because we respected what they had and brought to the party, and vice versa.
So from this perspective then, thinking about people who are looking to sell their business, how should they consider taking a majority, keeping a minority and taking a majority partner from their perspective, and from your perspective, looking at it from the other side, when you're not taking 100% control of a company, but keeping a partner on board? What advice would you have for people to make those kind of relationships work well?
Well, first of all, if the people who are staying and have ownership that are minorities stay as minority shareholders, that's the perfect situation. When we come together, there's no question that they have skin in the game and they want the thing to win. Same time, we needed to have majority just in case whatever was going to happen. But I'd like to advise anybody who's considering selling that if they can, they're better off selling when they are still willing to keep a stake, because that looks better than I want to sell and get out completely, particularly if you've been a major part of the operations. So if there's a case where now in automation, some of the guys are thinking, I want to be out of here in about 5 years, well, maybe you ought to sell some of what you've got before that, because that's more valuable when you go to the market.
Interesting. Right now we are in a stage in business where disruption seems to lead the way, finding ways to disrupt industries. What are your thoughts on disruption?
I think it's great when you're part of it, positive part of it instead of a negative part of it. I mean, clearly, that's what you want to seek. And that's maybe part of, for instance, in the automation case, that's a little bit of the disruption, because by getting in as first tier, you're taking the first tier relationship away from maybe the folks that were your customers. And now you're making them a supplier to you. But, it's a very positive thing, particularly if you bring enough high-level value added to the situation so that the customers can see, oh, this really works. You've got the access to machine builders, but you've got this system integration experience that we need to work closely with. So in that case, it's very important that that's the way it's done.
Excellent. Well, Warren, I want to thank you for sitting down with me and talking a little bit about deal making here at the Dealmakers Conference. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Warren, thank you so much. That was an awesome interview. So, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed the day's sessions, our speakers, and our Dealmakers conversations. On behalf of Smart Business, our title sponsor, UBS, and all of our great group of sponsors for today's conference, we hope you enjoyed yourself. We want to thank you for joining us, and we want you to look out for an email from our team at Smart Business. Thank you for being here.